In the first reading today from the book of Exodus, we have that very poignant event of the golden calf. And I can remember as a kid watching the Cecil B. DeMille movie on the Ten Commandments and just being utterly shocked at this group of people that, worshiping this pagan god, and how could they fall away so quickly, seeing great signs and wonders, and they're only 3 months in, they've got 40 years, but I remember it made an impression on me how pagan it was and how odd. But I was reading in a book by the then Cardinal Ratzinger, and he said the golden calf really wasn't about switching to this pagan god. It was a more subtle apostasy. It was making this graven image that they were not supposed to do, but making a god in the way they had wanted God to be. They had already received the Ten Commandments. They're at Sinai. They'd received the Ten Commandments. They received the minutiae of how they were to worship. I mean, all the vestments and ablutions and things like that was all given to them. And, Moses goes away for a period of time, I think it's 40 days, and, all of a sudden God's too remote. We need God more accessible. We need to bring him down to us. And that is not such a strange thing. I mean, that's very common for modern man to do something like that, to form God in the image we want him to be, and to be the kind of God we want him to be. Cardinal Ratzinger, in his book, The Spirit of Liturgy, he has this wonderful treatment of Exodus, and he speaks of Exodus, this journey out of the slavery of Egypt, as having two purposes. One, of course, is to reach the Promised Land. We're told that, Moses is told that from the burning bush. But also we hear when Moses goes to Pharaoh, he always says, or at least 4 times he says, "Let my people go that they may serve me in the wilderness, that they may celebrate a feast with their God." So there's that promise. I mean, the first purpose, reaching the Promised Land. The second one, let my people go so they can come and serve me, so they can come and offer sacrifice, so they can have the freedom of worship. We see that Pharaoh tries different compromises. He said, well, just stay in the land, go within the land. And no, Moses says we must leave Exodus. We must leave this bondage. We must have this freedom to worship. But also how their own hearts had grown attached to Egypt. Remember, they say, take us back to Egypt. We had garlic and oil and things like that. They were rooted in that, and it's hard to detach from that. It's such a type of the Christian journey that we all need to go through our own Exodus. We need to leave the familiar, what we're used to, and embrace the new transcendent God. Another compromise Moses tried was just only the men leave. And then he said, well, leave the livestock. He tried these different things, but Moses said, no, we all need to go. We're not sure what we need to worship God, so we're taking everything. So we see that Israel departs in order to be a people to serve God. And this promise to Abraham about being given the land was being fulfilled here. So the land is given to the people of Israel as a place to worship the true God. Remember, they get to the Promised Land, they build a temple and offer sacrifice to God. So it's a true gift to the people because they'll have this freedom to worship, and it's to be a place where God reigns. It's to be a realm of obedience to God. And so we see that at Sinai, they're given the law, which is just intrinsic to this freedom that they're to have in the land, the Promised Land. They're given the commandments. Moses makes a covenant, or God makes a covenant with the people. They're given the details of how to worship. And we see this connection between the commandments, living a moral life, and worship. So man living righteously is the true worship of God. Life becomes full when we are worshiping God, when we look at God, and we're given the strength, we're given the purpose, we're given the direction on how to live. So God forms his people by giving him a law and giving him, teaching him how to worship him. So another big error of our day, right? We want to be free without the law, but we see that you absolutely need this law to have true freedom. Otherwise, we're just following our own self-will, we fall into sin, we become enslaved. So Sinai, Cardinal Ratzinger says in a beautiful way, Sinai gives man its interior land, without which the exterior one would be a cheerless prospect. It gives us this interior freedom that they can enjoy this fulfillment of the promise given to Abraham. So when Sinai is lost, so to speak, the land is lost. And we see that tragedy with Israel, right? They have the Babylonian captivity when they disobey the covenant. When they fail to live the law to its fullness, they lose the land. So that's a big message for us, right? Our relationship with God needs to be first, needs to be primary. And when that happens, our relationship with others, with the community, gets right. You know, we need to lay hold of a more perfect life, this heavenly life, to get this life here on earth in order. Otherwise, this world becomes empty for us. And we see the presence of this desire for the transcendent or some kind of hope. You know, man can't live without this, right? If we're just left to this world, everyone has a sense of that we get corrupted. I mean, even atheists have some form of worship. They have some kind of hope, some kind of transcendent hope that they're striving for. They believe can deliver some kind of perfect life for them. We see that in our culture today. I mean, today we have all kinds of cults and things, so to speak. Cult of the body, cult of human perfection. You know, I'm going to get all this stuff right, then I'll be fulfilled. But we know that can't deliver. So Cardinal Ratzinger makes the point that, you know, we simply cannot make worship. And he says this is what Moses says when he says, we need the livestock even, because we do not know, you know, how we are to serve the Lord. He's going to reveal that to us when we get out there in the wilderness. So real liturgy, God reveals how to worship him. We need to be guided. So with the golden calf, it's not so much serving a false god, but they're trying to represent this God that, by their own initiative, the God that led them out of Egypt. And of course, it is a violation of the first commandment, the prohibition of images. You know, they're saying, well, God's too remote. Where is this Moses? Where has he gone to? You know, this invisible God. We need something that we can see. We need a God that we can bring down into our own world. You know, it's not, not so much going up to him, but God comes down to us. He must be where he is needed. And, you know, we see that this desire that we have is fulfilled in Christ, that he comes down to us to reveal the Father, and he is the perfect worship of the Father. So maybe there is something true and good in their desire to know God deeper, but of course they break the commandments. So the worship of God is a self-generated cult, and they turn to themselves. That's what it winds up becoming. Remember in this next passage, Moses is coming down from the mountain, and they hear, they're not sure all the ruckus they hear. Is there a war going on? And Moses said, it doesn't sound like the noise of war drums or anything like that. It's merrymaking. So when they abandon God and his revelation, it becomes a celebration of themselves. They're no longer concerned with God, but giving oneself a nice God, that they want to deal with, and it becomes just inward celebration of self.